Hey guys, I know we said we quit streaming and making YouTube videos, and yes, we are still quit in a sense, but we kind of missed it, so we're doing it very casually just when we have time. So patch 7.3 just recently hit us, so I thought it would be a good idea to rework my profile one last time to leave you guys with a solid foundation to work from. I have no intention of continuing to maintain my public TSM profile beyond this point, so the point of this video is to go through what's new, give you guys some suggestions on how to tweak it and maintain it yourself. I will not be covering how to install the profile as I have another video covering those step-by-step instructions. The video will be linked in the description. For this latest profile, most of the group structure is quite similar, condensed a few things, reorganized a few things, but more importantly, I've reworked the entire pricing system for selling your stuff. Much cleaner and comes with the extra step of making 3 custom prices. I will show you in a bit how to do those custom prices as this is new, but the point of them are they will allow the user to make the whole profile much more aggressive or much less aggressive in seconds, depending on what you're trying to do. I think it's really obvious and goes without saying that it's not possible for anyone to make a profile that works perfectly all the time on all servers for every single user. However, I really think this profile is a really solid foundation to work from and will generally work well across most servers most of the time. I've widened the margins on the profile to accommodate those who play on all servers, not just high pop servers, but I will show you later in the video how to quickly adjust it to suit your needs. It is important for you guys to start learning more about TSM so you can keep your profile up to date yourself. There are only a few new items that come into the game at a time. You will need to just make a group for them or add them in an existing group and apply any operations you want to them. It's quite easy to do. Please remember that a TSM profile is never complete and it's up to you to keep adjusting it to suit your needs. For any of you guys who are confused and not sure if you should use Muffins groups or my groups, that's really up to you. If you prefer building your own groups and operations and just want list of item IDs, then you might prefer Muffins content. However, if you're new to TSM or just a little on the lazy side, you might want my profile because it comes with group structures and all the buying, selling, and crafting operations. With my profile, you will never sell anything for less than crafting cost or less than what you bought it for, which is very, very important. Alright guys, let's get into it. My profile can be found on Pastebin. I have 3 different Pastebins. They all have exactly the same items, so you'll have to choose which one you want to use and stick with that one. A link for the 3 Pastebins will be in the description. Now the main Pastebin, the one you're looking at right now, is the one that most people use. It has really large groups. It's great for the beginner gold maker as a template to learn from, and it's also really good for experienced gold makers. The groups are very large, and if you don't have a very powerful PC, you will crash when trying to import some of these massive groups. This profile comes with all the buying, selling, and crafting operations built for you. So that's the reason I made the alternative Pastebin, which is what you're looking at right now. It has much smaller groups for those people who couldn't import the larger groups on the main Pastebin. Everything is just broken down into smaller chunks. The advantage of this is people can choose very specific groups and don't have to import the whole profile. So someone who only wanted to be involved in Legion only content for their gold making could easily do that with this Pastebin. These groups also come with all the operations built for you. And another group of goblins requested a profile without operations as they like the organization of all the groups and item IDs. This is mainly used by advanced goblins who are very comfortable making their own operations. A highly motivated beginner could start here, but it would be unusual. However, you will better understand what the profile is doing when you make your own operations. This Pastebin would be similar in style to Muffin stuff as it just has the item IDs. When you go to import my profile, it would be a good idea to start fresh, so you can either reset your current profile to default if you have anything in there just by hitting this reset profile button, or if you'd rather just make a new profile and put my stuff in and have a look at it and anything that you like, you can pull over to your main profile. There's lots of different ways you can do it. So to just make a new profile, you just name it whatever you want to call your profile, and it'll just make a new one with a new name. And then you can go and select all different kinds of profiles that you want to have a look at. You can even make macros to switch back and forth between profiles. Either way, start with a fresh profile when installing my TSM profile. So if you wanted to go and import my leatherworking group into your profile, all you would have to do is type in leatherworking here, and then the group would appear down here, and then once you've made the group leatherworking, you highlight on it, go to import export, make sure this box here is checked, move already grouped items, And this is where you pop in that string that you grabbed from my paste bin. So pop it in here, hit enter. You're going to get a prompt that comes up that's asking you, do you want to replace, skip, or cancel? You want to replace because you want to get all those new operations. So just keep hitting replace over and over and over. And then once it's done, you have to make sure that you reload your UI after every single group that you import, or the next one won't work. Reload your UI, very, very important. Really important to make sure that you have TSM and all their official modules downloaded and enabled along with the desktop app, or it's not going to work. So now it's time to show you how to make those custom prices. Now these are new with the 7.3 profile. There are step-by-step instructions in Pastebin for how to do these custom prices in copy-paste format, so you're going to want to be relying on that, and I'll have a link in the description. So go to TSM features, which is up here in the top left hand, and then go to custom prices, which is right here, and you need to type in Shaymin. So there's Shaymin, and you type in Shaymin. Now you got to go to Pastebin and you got to grab that long string and type it in here. So we're going to go do that right now. So here on the Pastebin, you can go to custom prices and Pastebin links. This is where you're going to find that custom price you need to use. And here you have step 1, step 2, step 3. So we're doing step 1 right now, which is Shaymin, and we're going to copy this whole thing in. And after you get that done, you have to go do Shaynorm and copy this string in, and then you have to go type in Shaymax and type that string in. So we're just going to show you step 1, and then you guys can do step 2 and step 3 yourself. So copy that. We're going to go back to the game, and we're going to put this string in here, and we're going to hit enter, and there we've got Shaymin. So you need to go ahead and do Shaynorm and Shaymax, and then you're done. Nearly every single operation in the entire profile refers to those 3 custom prices that you just made for minimum, normal, and maximum price. So let's explain what this is doing. So as an example, we're just going to go look at this particular group and operation. So let's go ahead and have a look and see what it is. So we've got Shaymin for minimum, we've got Shaynorm for normal, and we've got Shaymax for maximum. So they're referring to those custom prices that you just made. So now you don't have to have those big long strings in there. And if you look through all of these operations, you can see that all of them are referring to Shaymin, Shaynorm, Shaymax. All of these are the same. And most everything in the profile are using one of these operations. There's a few exceptions to that, of course, but most everything is referring to that. Now, I'm not sure how obvious this is to you guys. It's probably pretty obvious to some people, but maybe not for some other people. So I'm just going to cover it. So minimum price is the absolute lowest price that you're going to be willing to sell your stuff for. Maximum price is going to be the absolute highest that you're willing to sell stuff for, and then normal price is going to be somewhere in the middle. So that's when you hear people talking about price ranges, that's your price ranges. So you have to determine if you want your price ranges to be really wide or if you want them to be really narrow. Narrow is usually more aggressive and it's more for higher population servers. If you're on lower population servers or you don't like being very aggressive, then you can widen out that range. But that's the range that you're willing to sell your stuff in. Okay, so let's look into our minimum price into a little bit more detail so I can explain to you what it's actually doing so you can change it if you want to change it or at least understand what it's doing. So I'm using a first function. So what it's going to do is it's going to go from left to right, and the first number that it comes up with is the number it's going to use. So the first number that's real. So if you're trying to sell something and you can craft the item, it's going to first look at the crafting cost. So 105% of your crafting cost, taking into account your auction house cut, which is the 0.95 part. So you would be selling things at a minimum at a 5% profit above your crafting cost if you can craft the item. Now, if you can't craft the item, then it's going to look at your average buy price. So 105% of your average buy price, taking into account your auction house cut, which is the 0.95 part. So you would sell things for at least 5% profit on top of what you bought it for, taking into account your auction house cut. So you're never, ever, ever going to sell anything below crafting cost or never sell anything below what you bought it for, taking into account your auction house cut. And in this case, you'll always be guaranteeing yourself a 5% profit. You could turn that down to 102% if you wanted to, but that's what it's doing. Now, in a case where an item you're trying to sell, you can't craft it and you've never bought it, then it's still going to come up with a number. It will use 70% of DB market, which is the last 14 days on your server, more heavily weighted towards the last couple days. So most of the time, that number is always going to work if the first two don't apply. If the item happens to be a little bit more rare and it doesn't have a DB market number, then it's going to use DB historical, which is the last 60 days on your server. Then if it doesn't have DB historical, it will start looking at DB region and then region historical, global, global historical. Most of the time, you're going to find that TSM is either using crafting or average buy. If you happen to be a farmer or just acquiring things through friends or randomly from wherever, then it will just use DB market. All of the rest of that stuff is rarely ever going to be used. It's only there as a backup in case you're coming across a weird situation where something's really rare, you can't craft it, and you've never bought it before. So just a backup. Okay, so let's look at Shey norms. So that's the normal price you're wanting to post things for. This one here is a little bit different than the one for minimum pricing. So you'll notice the function at the beginning is a little different. Instead of using first, I'm using maximum, but there still are some first functions in there. So again, really important to understand what these operations are doing. So because there's a max function, what it's doing is there's basically two different sections in this operation. It's going to pull a number for the first section and it's going to pull a number for the second section, and whichever one of those is higher is the one it's going to use, and that's because of the max function. If I had had a minimum function, it would use whichever one was lower, but we're using max. So what's going to happen here in this situation is any item that can be crafted, as an example, it will look at 150% of crafting cost, taking into account the auction house cut, of course, and it's also going to look at 100% of DB market. Now, whichever one of those is highest is the number it's going to use. But if the item can't be crafted, then it's going to look at 150% of your average buy price, taking into account your auction house cut, and 100% of DB market, and whichever one of those is highest is the one it's going to use. So it just depends on if the item you're trying to sell, if it can be crafted, or if you've bought it before. And it just pulls whichever of those two sections has the highest number is the number it will use in the end. Everything beyond DB market, like DB historical, region historical, global historical, like I mentioned previously, are not going to be used most of the time, only in really rare situations. So if you look at Shey Max, it's quite similar to Shey Norm, it's just the percentages are a little bit higher. Again, I'm also starting with the max function. And for an item that could be crafted, what it's going to do, it's going to look at 200% of the crafting cost, taking into account the auction house cut. And it's also going to look at 200% of DB market. And whichever one of those numbers is the highest is going to be the number it uses for its max price. If the item can't be crafted, then it's going to look at 200% of your average buy price, taking into account your auction house cut, and it's also going to look at 200% of DB market. Whichever of those is the highest is going to be the number it uses for your maximum price that you're willing to sell things for. For any of you guys who aren't aware of this option, use Smart Average for purchase price, it would be a good idea for you guys to turn this on. So make sure you have this box checked. So if you want to make it a little bit more aggressive, this is an example of how you could make it a little bit more aggressive. So you could see all the numbers are pulled down a little bit more, so that means your selling ranges are going to be a little narrower, a little tighter, a little bit more aggressive. It's also safe to use for someone who's just farming and is not crafting or flipping anything on the auction house. It's still quite reasonable if you wanted to just get rid of your stuff really, really quickly and you didn't like the original profile and how the settings were in the original profile. If you happen to be a pretty hardcore auction house player and you're only crafting and flipping stuff and you're never out farming anything, and you find that people on your server are trying to sell things for 20 to 30 times their crafting costs, or they're just selling things at just outrageous prices and you want to pull them down, this would be an example of how you could kind of get things back on track really, really quickly, or just really piss off your competitors. Totally up to you. Bit of a douchey move, but sometimes I do this when things kind of get out of hand, or if I have limited time and I can't play the auction house, I post things at very, very cheap prices, so my competitors have to either wait for my stuff to be sold, or they have to buy out my stuff, or they just have to undercut it. So sometimes I do some dirty things, but that's part of the auction house play anyway. And if you happen to be on a lower population server, or you just prefer your margins being a lot wider, a lot less aggressive, this would be an example of how you could accomplish that. So for posting times, I think it's most reasonable to use 24 hours because I think that just accommodates everyone pretty nicely. But if you really feel like you want all the operations to be for 12 hours, it's only going to take you a minute or two to change them, because all you need to change pretty much are these guys, because the rest of them down there are just very small, unique markets. Most everything in the profile uses this. So you would just go through, instead of 24, just change everything down to 12 if that's what you want it to do. So you would just click through and change them to be every 12 hours, every 24 hours, every 48 hours, whatever you want it. I chose to go with 24 hours because I think it just works best for the most amount of people. And I have some things that are set to 12 hours, and most of the time that's because they have really high posting fees, or they just happen to be a market where you need to post frequently because they're very high turnover. So again, go in and change and adjust any of that to suit whatever it is you want. Again, I cannot make everyone happy here. Some people will like this, some people will hate it. So change it to be what you want. It's your profile. So it's really important for you guys to go turn on some important tooltips, because not all of them are on by default, and there's a lot of things that probably should be on, and you're going to be missing out on a lot of things and not understanding a lot of what's happening without those tooltips on. So go into your options and go to tooltip options. Anything here that you want to see in your tooltips, make sure that you turn them on, and go through each individual section and anything that you want to see on your tooltips. So when you hover your mouse over items, say in your bags or on the auction house, what information do you want to see on those tooltips? So there's a lot of good stuff you can turn on. Now you don't need to turn on everything because it might get a little cluttered, but you have to decide what's important for you to turn on. So if you want to see sale info, turn on sale info. If you don't turn it on. A lot of stuff in here is important to turn on Auction DB. So I turn on things that are related to my server, and I turn on a lot related to region. There's some stuff I don't turn on. Decide what you want to see, what you don't want to see. If you're getting a little too confused, maybe cut it down a little bit, but that's what I have turned on. But definitely make sure that you have market value, min buyout, all of those good ones you want to have turned on for sure. And then for auctioning, I think it's really important to have this one turned on because it shows you your auctioning, your range that you're willing to sell stuff in. I think that's really important. Everyone should have that one turned on for sure. If you're crafting anything at all to sell on the auction house, I think it's important to have all of this on. If you're not crafting anything ever and you're just flipping stuff, you might not care about it. I definitely have it on. And I also turned this one here on, which shows the maximum price. So it's nice to just hover your mouse over your tooltip and you can see what the maximum price is that you're willing to buy stuff at. You can see what your average buy price for things are. You can see what it costs to craft that particular item. You can see the range that TSM is going to be selling your stuff in based on what you've set up. So you get a lot of really good information, but you got to have them turned on. So make sure you go through your tooltips and decide what you want to see, and then hover your mouse over some items in your bag and just have a look and see what's there. And you know, if you find it's too much, cut anything out you don't want to see. If you want to add on a bit more, add on a bit more. Okay, so let's talk a little about my groups. If you're new to gold making, you will see most of the profession groups are broken down into 3 sections: a legion part, an established markets part, and then everything else left over in the final part. The established group will give you some ideas on some great consistent markets that you should check on your server. Don't overlook old content markets. They are some of the best out there. Sure, they are a little bit slower, but they come with great profit and a whole lot less competition. The legion markets have smaller profits on them, but you sell enormous quantities. It's ideal to have some high and some low turnover markets. Most of the profile will only tell you to craft things if they have over 100 gold profit. You can easily go in and change this. So here's an example where I have something set to 100 gold minimum profit, just crafting one, provided it meets that criteria. If you want to go in and bump it up to only crafting one of everything that's over 250 gold minimum profit, so you're going to be crafting a lot less stuff and you're going to be focusing on better things. You could change it to crafting one of 500 if you want to do that, or 1,000. The higher you put your minimum profit, the less items are going to be coming out of your crafting queue, and the less items you're going to be crafting, and the less items you're going to be posting on the auction house. So you want to try to find that perfect balance where you have enough stuff on the auction house where you're making enough gold to keep you happy, but you don't want to have so much stuff so every time you do your cancel scans that you have tons and tons of nonsense stuff just bogging you down and slowing you down. So just find your minimum threshold of where you want to work in the auction house and just go in and adjust your crafting queues on any of the groups that you're using if you don't like how it is by default. Very, very easy to change any of that stuff. I also have the crafting queue set to pretty low for most items, so as not to scare off those starting with their gold making. I personally increase my crafting on Legion stuff to really large amounts, but most of the old content stuff, I only craft one of each over 250 gold profit, and as it sells, I make another. Usually only do my crafting queue every day or every other day. Sometimes I only have time to do it once a week. If I happen to notice I'm selling lots of a particular item, I'll increase the crafting queue so I'll make more next time. So adjust the profile to meet your demands. Even though the crafting queues are small, the auctioning operations are built for the more established gold maker. So the person who only is crafting 1 to 2 of something, the profile's still going to work to sell those 1 or 2 of whatever it is they're making. But if you happen to crank up your crafting queues, the operations are already set and ready to go for the established gold maker. So here's an example of the alchemy intellect flask for Legion. So I have it set to post in stacks of 10, 1 stack of 10, 1 stack of 5, 1 stack of 4, 1 stack of 3, and 5 singles. If you happen to think that you're never going to post them in a stack of 10, you just think that's too big and you don't like it and you don't want to do it, then just go and get rid of that operation and it won't do that. If you want to get rid of that one, get rid of that one. If you don't like those, get rid of those. But totally up to you, and you just adjust and change the profile to suit your needs. If you just want to post them in singles, get rid of all these. If you want to post them in different stack sizes, if you don't like these, then change them. Totally up to you. I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with Sniper. If not, check out my Sniper video, also linked in the description. So Sniper will run any new items posted on the auction house on that last page through whatever your Sniper string is, and if it matches that string, it's going to show up. However, you can also force specific items to show up on Sniper along with normal Sniper if you want. So if you have a couple of items that you really need and you can never get enough of them, you can make a group for those items, and in the shopping operation, click the button that says include in Sniper searches, which is right here, and it will show up on the Sniper window as long as they are below your maximum price in that shopping operation on that group. This is not limited to the last page of the auction house. If the item exists anywhere on the auction house under your maximum price, it will show up on your Sniper window. So I have some of my favorite items that I like to have showing up on Sniper. I have them turned on the default profile. So if you like that, great. If you don't like that, you can easily turn it off. So all you would need to do is go to operations and then go to shopping. And there's about 4 or 5 operations that are set to include in Sniper. So you can see there's one right here. So you would just go uncheck that if you wanted to turn it off, and just go through and find the other couple and just turn them off if you don't want random things in my TSM profile showing up on Sniper in addition to regular Sniper. One example of how this is really, really good is this new ore that came out in 7.3. I have this set to show up on Sniper, so anytime I'm running Sniper and this ore happens to be anywhere on the auction house below my maximum price that I'm willing to pay for it, it's going to show up there. So I'm able to constantly skim all the cheap ore off the auction house all the time whenever I'm running Sniper, so I don't have to keep searching for it randomly. It's just always going. I'm grabbing all the cheap stuff non-stop, and then I can make more gems and make more gold. So anything that's important to you to have turned on in Sniper from any of your random groups, just go turn it on. Anything you don't want turned on, just turn it off. Up to you. Really, really good feature though. So I wanted to briefly talk about my Transmog groups. So how I got all these items in the groups is I just went to wowhead and used some filters and grabbed all the items and made item IDs and just popped them into TSM. Now using wowhead is going to get most of the items in the game, but sometimes it's going to miss certain items. So I went and checked and compared against Fat Loots, and I noticed Fat Loots had 56 items in his Transmog groups that weren't in mine, so I popped them in mine, so now they're the same. And the other thing I need to mention is when it comes to sorting, I have my Transmog stuff sorted based on prices to allow you guys to decide what you want to do. Some people only sell the cheaper Transmog because they're out farming a lot of it themselves. And then other people are just in the higher value Transmog and they're just flipping it on the auction house. There's different people doing different style of things. So I needed to resort them because sometimes Blizzard will add things to the game, take things out of the game, change drop rates. So where some of these items were sorted previously kind of needed to be changed. They had to be put in different groups because at one point they were probably valued at 1,000, 2,000 gold. And then because of some change, now they could be worth 10,000 gold. So even though the sorting, they might not be sorted in the right group, they're still going to be posted on the auction house at the right prices because they're still referencing market value, region market value, and that sort of stuff. So you're not really going to be screwed when you're posting stuff on the auction house, but it's nice to have things sorted in appropriate categories. So I'm just going to show you an example of how to go about to resort all of the stuff in here in case you wanted to do it. So the first step would be to go and grab all the item IDs out of all of these subgroups that have been pre-sorted, and you're going to want to put them all back into that main group. So just go to export items and make sure these 2 boxes on the bottom are unchecked because you just want the item IDs. You don't want anything else. Control A, Control C, and then you go pop it in this string up here, make sure this box is checked or it's not going to work, and hit Control V, put all your item IDs. So everything that was previously sorted in here is now pulled out and put in the main group, and you have to go resort it yourself. So select whichever filter that you want. So let's say we're going to use 70% dB region market average. So that's what I'm going to use for this. You can use whatever you want. So let's go down to 0.50 gold. So we're in the 0.50 gold section, and all you need to do is /0 gold /50 gold, hit enter. Everything that meets that filter is now highlighted. You hit add, and bam, it's over in the group, and then you go do the next one. Exact same thing, /50 gold /100 gold. Hit enter, everything matching that filter is selected, hit add, and that group is done. So you just go down through the list and you sort everything based on whatever you want to use, and I think different people might use different things. There's no right or wrong, it just depends on what you're doing. So for those of you who don't know who Muffins is, he is part of the TSM team, and he is collecting lots of data on every single item variation seen in the game. He has all those item ID lists made available to you guys, and a link will be in the description. Muffins leaves it up to the user to build their own operations and group structure, but these lists are really incredible and he keeps them up to date. So every now and then, go grab those groups and pop them into your TSM to keep it up to date with all the new variations. Muffins has data on BOEs, mostly the raid BOEs, and random drops, including the 101 gear. I have pulled all of the data from Muffins group up to and including 7.3 launch into my paste bin for your convenience, but if you would prefer to get it directly from Muffins, you can. Keep in mind that the uncommon parts of plate, leather, cloth, and mail are enormously huge. They're so huge that I can't even export, no one can import. There's just way too much of those greens that I've just decided I'm gonna not include them into my paste bin, because I don't think anyone's that concerned about those green items. They're very difficult to import. You're gonna have to just, if you really, really want them, you're gonna have to pop them into a notepad and just put them in little chunks at a time. But the greens, I don't think anyone's flipping the greens. I don't think anyone cares about the greens. It's mostly the purples I think you should be concerned about. So I'm going to re-upload all of Muffin's stuff today after I get this video done. And I'm just going to include the epics, the purples and the blues. And the greens I'm not going to include because no one can import it anyway, because they're so big. There's so many variations and so many different types of greens. It's just too much and it's just never going to work for anyone. So once I get rid of all of those uncommons, those greens, people will be able to import from all my different paste bins and it'll work just fine. But if you're really insistent and you really want those damn greens, go over to Muffins group and you can grab them there and you can pop them in if you really want them, but I think you're crazy to go get them. You don't need them. So that's all I wanted to cover in this video. I hope you guys found it helpful. In the background, while I wasn't showing you anything specific, I just have my VOD from my last stream in the background where I collected gold from the first 2 weeks of 7.3 to give you guys an idea of some of the items I sell on a regular basis. I started with 1 gold and ended up with around 7 million on this one tune. Before I go, I just wanted to mention that there is an awesome gold making community out there and you should get involved if you aren't already, specifically the WoW Economy and TSM Discord. They just broke 10,000 members. You will find some of the best goblins there talking about all things gold making. Make sure you hang out there and absorb the most up-to-date gold making strategies and contribute any ideas you may have, ask questions, get TSM support. I'll have a link in the description. As well, Gumdrops, who is a member of the TSM team and is involved in numerous projects, has begun writing gold-making articles on Wowhead, and we are starting to finally get noticed by Blizzard. Please check them out and comment on them. They are a great resource for gold making, and he covers what has been going on in the gold making community in that week. So it's a great opportunity to keep on top of things. I'll have a link for that in the description as well. Thanks for watching. See you next time.